Hello and welcome to Getting Into Sundance. My name is Megan Keene and I'm part of the Pro Video team at Adobe. And I'm so excited to be here with Eugene Hernandez, director of the Sundance Film Festival. Thank you for being here, Eugene.
Hi, Megan. How's it going?
It's good. It's good. You know, we are less than a week from the festival starting. Yeah, you are really, it's go time. How are you feeling?
I feel great. Pardon my little raspy voice to those who are listening in. We're in the dry air here in Salt Lake. I feel good. The team feels good. We are less than a week away, as you said. Our teams are building out the theaters, putting the final touches on the venues. Our partners and sponsors are finalizing their spaces and locations, and we're in a good place. As we're sitting here, it's the Friday before the festival starts, and yesterday was a big day for us. Tickets went on sale to the general public. We had a really great day yesterday. Systems held, and we sold a lot of tickets, and audiences are getting excited. I've been here in Salt Lake doing press, talking with folks about the lineup, getting the word out about the movies that we're showing. So we're where we need to be.
Yeah, you know, it's such an exciting time of year for us, and so much work has gone into all of this, but it really can't be overstated, the amount of work and excitement for the filmmakers, right? And we actually we were able to catch up with some of the filmmakers last year. So I want to kick things off with a little video hearing from some of last year's filmmakers. Okay. So let's go to the sizzle.
Making a film is like building an airplane as it takes off. You have to have it completed by the time you land. And you really need so many people to build that plane with you. You can't do it on your own.
As a filmmaker, having a film at Sundance means the film is a part of history. This is the big upload button. It's a dream come true.
Claiming your voice as a filmmaker, I think it makes it a lot easier when things feel accessible to you.
Premiere just feels really tangible. If an idea comes, I can just do it without thinking about it. It feels like putting on a glove at this point.
I love Premiere. It's how I've edited all the features that I've edited. It just makes sense the way it's laid out.
Premiere allows me to move scenes and feelings and ideas around without feeling like the software is even present.
Some of the features that are great in Premiere Pro is the integration of sound design software and also any VFX you want to use.
We had so many transcripts. We had so many interviews. We used speech-to-text for transcriptions because it was really fast. Speech-to-text was like the best way to do it.
This key opens everything.
Frame.io was very important for us. It's the easiest way to communicate frame by frame. It's the only way we got the film done in time to be at the Sundance Film Festival.
The relationship between Frame and Premiere is so integral because of how much we're handing off between people all the time.
We edited this film in 6 different locations.
Collaboration in general, this is filmmaking. You have to get along with the people that you work with to bring the art or the message that you have to the screen.
There is no solo filmmaker. Storytelling is the most important thing, and it's the collaboration. It's looking around and seeing all the faces. It's the most fulfilling parts of the process.
Wow, that was so great. Megan, this is terrific because I think it just really reminds us, and something that we'll talk about today, I'm sure, is that this festival really is rooted in the work and the artistry, the artists. The artists are the center. Everything at Sundance Institute, 40 plus years, festival's 40th edition, it all starts with the filmmakers. So that was just such a beautiful compilation and reminder of what we're doing here and why we're exhausted right now getting ready for the festival.
Absolutely. You know, before we get started, I do want to remind everybody that we are live streaming, and we are taking questions from the live chat. So if you have questions, please do put them in the chat. They will be fed to me. I can, share them with Eugene. But yeah, one thing that is so special about Sundance, you speak about the artistry and the artists, but also the community that is built here is so special and something that really resonates through all of the filmmaker conversations that we have year over year. Yeah,
it's something that, well, look, it's personal for me because it's how I became aware of Sundance and got involved with Sundance. I started as a journalist, and my first Sundance was 30 years ago. And that was something that I thought about at that very early stage. This is the early 90s. That notion of community, that opportunity to come together. I didn't really understand what a film festival was at that point, right? I was just out of school and just trying to find my way, and came to Sundance kind of on a whim with a friend. And that's what stood out to me. When we started IndieWire in the mid-90s, it was to try to replicate that community that you feel when you come to a festival like this. And Sundance was really the model. How do you take that experience and have it travel beyond the experience of the festival itself? Absolutely. It's so interesting as you travel through the festival, like on the shuttles, standing in line, at the coffee shop, as you're waiting for a movie, everybody is a creative, has these stories that they're sharing, and whether they're filmmakers in the festival or here to watch the films, there is just so much conversation always, and everybody seems so open to talk to each other. I wonder how it's been sort of replicating that into more of a hybrid, where there's now the in-person and the virtual festival. It's interesting because when you talk about that, those chance encounters, my first Sundance in '93, I ended up staying a little longer. I was having such a great time. And on one of the shuttle buses, I met one of my future business partners, Mark Rabinowitz, and he and Sherry Barner and I started IndieWire together. It was because of that meeting on the shuttle bus. So it's a great question you asked, Megan, because it's something that I've been thinking about now more than a year into this role. I was running the New York Film Festival previously and now being at Sundance. How do we create a dynamic community in both spaces, or in the physical space and then in the sort of undefinable hybrid digital space? It's something that, as I mentioned with IndieWire, it's something we thought about early on in my own career. I was in my 20s when we launched IndieWire, and was that idea, like I said, of replicating the in-person environment in an online, and still kind of emerging at this time in the 90s online world. I think a lot of that kind of prepared me in ways I couldn't have predicted for where we are now. So what's been really exciting is building on what Sundance has been doing for the last number of years. This will be the 4th year that there's a digital component, a live digital component to the festival, meaning that films will premiere in the first 5 or 6 days in person here in Salt Lake City, up the mountain in Park City. And then at the last half of the festival, that final weekend, films will be available nationwide, and if you're press or industry, worldwide, for a limited window, a limited number of views, a limited number of days. But we really do think about how to connect the in-person experience with that of the audience, who will have an opportunity to kind of just get a little snapshot of some of the films that people will be talking about the rest of the year, getting that snapshot kind of in the latter half on the digital platform. So we're still exploring every year ways to do that, and ways to engage the audience, and ways to create content that we can share from the experience in Utah to the audience who's tuning in internationally or domestically. And we also kind of want to create a little bit of FOMO too, like just that, because there's something special in here, to your point, when we all get to come together in person. Yeah, and I'm sure, it really brings up a lot of topics of accessibility, of the equity of sharing these stories. Yeah. So talk a little bit about the benefits of having that hybrid element added to the festival. Well, what we see, and I'm sure you do at Adobe as you're talking to artists, whether it's at the festival or year-round, what drives creativity? And some of the folks listening in today can weigh in on this and share their questions or comments to this. Most artists don't make work to keep it to themselves, or sometimes if they do, they sort of spend time before taking it out to an audience. But ultimately, you want to engage an audience of some kind. Many artists do, most artists do. So that's something we're very mindful of. And particularly in the independent film space, whether that's domestically here in the States or internationally, artists are making work that reflects or engages or connects with what's happening either in the world or in their individual world. And what we feel is that we have an opportunity, in fact, we have a responsibility for the films that we choose, 90 plus features, 55 or so shorts, we have a responsibility and accountability to help those films get an introduction to their audience. We're not the ultimate destination for the films that we select. We're the starting point. And so having films on a digital platform, I think, gives us an opportunity to give each of those films and filmmakers the best possible introduction to their future audience. And so that's I think, crucial to how and why we sustain this hybrid model that we've been tweaking year over year, and we did it again this year, a few tweaks in response to the artist's needs.
So you mentioned film selection. Tell us about the 2024 submissions and sort of your selection process. How does your team go about choosing the programming?
It's an interesting moment to think about that question, because if we take a step back for a moment, and I'm sure folks who are listening right now, some may have films in the festival, some may have submitted films to the festival. We had more submissions to this year's festival, to the 2024 Sundance Film Festival, than ever in the history of the Sundance Film Festival. 17,000 entries to the festival. So that's features plus shorts plus episodic series, 17,000. And that's a big number for, again, 90 plus slots for features and 55 or so slots for shorts. So it starts there. The process is almost, effectively, it's a year-round process. Tomorrow I'm going to be meeting artists who are developing films at the Sundance Lab, which is up in the mountains at the Sundance Resort, not far from here, about an hour from where we are in Salt Lake, up in the mountains. And that's one of the Sundance Institute's premier programs, which is the Screenwriters Lab. And so some of the writers that I'll meet tomorrow at the Writers Lab, who are just starting this intensive next 6 days of working on their scripts and refining and honing their stories, might be writing scripts for features that we might be watching a year from now or in a couple years. Yep. Sometimes it takes a couple years. But point being that the process of the selection happens in the course of a calendar year, but it can take sometimes years for films and as artists who are listening in or watching now know to get that script right, to get the story right, so that you're ready to put it on film or on in front of cameras. So for us, to be more specific, the process really is a lot of research, development, exploration, meeting and connecting with artists, tracking all the many programs, whether it's Adobe Ignite or many other programs that support and sustain artists at early stages of their career or through their career, so that when we get to the process of actually watching the movies and it really heats up kind of late summer, like July, August, into October, so that we're ready and we have the tools and the preparation and the pool of entries in front of us to consider. So we can go more into the details of how we break that down, but that's sort of the bigger picture. It's a year-round exploratory process on the part of our team, which is programmers, curators who are out in the world, traveling to markets all around the world, traveling to festivals all around the world, connecting with producers and distributors and exhibitors all over the world.
I'm going to quote almost every single filmmaker that we've been talking to in this year's festival leading up to the festival start. When I ask, was it always your intent to submit to Sundance? The answer is always, well, Sundance is the dream, right? So I have a question from Isabel in the chat, and she says, what would you say is the most important aspect to a Sundance chosen film? Is it the script, the cinematography, the cast crew put together?
I mean, Isabel, it's a great question. So it's how all of those pieces work together or fit together. I'm not a filmmaker. I have been watching and thinking about and writing about and talking about films for my whole career, starting with my first Sundance 30 years ago. But speaking for myself, and then we can speak to the broader team, when you're taking in a film, you're hopefully seeing the combination of all of those crafts, all of the artistry, right? Most films, the vast majority of films, although there are exceptions, are made with a team, with someone who's behind the camera, as we have here, someone who's handling the sound, the lights, the makeup, all the different aspects and elements, the composition, the framing, not to mention like the editing and everything that happens, and then the tweaking that will happen once a film is, the correction of the color and the adjustment of things like that. So it's not really just one aspect or element that speaks to someone who's in a curatorial position. It's the combination of all of them. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes a particular element can take precedence or can take dominance over the rest, meaning like you have a really notable performance, right? That, the actor that you're looking at on the screen really like stands out, or something's really distinctive about the photography, or maybe there's a really interesting use of sound, or the way the image has been colored and shaped and adjusted really adds an element or something to the narrative or to the story, or the filmmaker's trying to evoke a feeling in the audience. So I think it is that combination. So I just invite and encourage artists who are thinking about submitting to Sundance or working on work now is to really think about all the different, I guess for lack of a better way to say it, all the different tools that you have right now at your disposal to try to evoke the response you want from an audience member like me or anybody else.
Yeah. I have another question from the chat. Randy asks, what types of films does Sundance look for? Is there a specific voice or mood in terms of programming? And I have a thought, and I'd love to hear your response. I encourage filmmakers not to be making a film because it's what Sundance is looking for, but because it's their voice and their perspective, and really that unique vision is how the most interesting work gets made.
Look, you've been talking to filmmakers for how long? I mean, your answer is exactly right, and that is because you have to make, I believe, as someone who's been attending this festival, for example, for almost 30 years, what strikes me as a viewer is what's distinctive about the film that I'm sitting in front of when I walk into that theater and the lights go down. And what tends to stand out for me are the stories that come from a personal place. So it's not, to me, it's not looking at a film that was in the festival last year and saying, how do I replicate that? Because because that film came from someone else's experience and journey and path and world. How can you transpose your own to theirs? Instead, maybe you can be inspired by something that happened in a film, or that was a way a film was made. Some folks, I was talking to some artists at an event yesterday, and they were saying how inspired they were by the film Tangerine, Sean Baker's film, and that film was sort of ahead of its time for this artist I was talking with. And the success can come from not necessarily trying to remake Sean Baker's Tangerine, but maybe thinking about elements of the way Sean shot that film with small phone cameras that allowed him to have an intimacy with his actors when they were shooting in the donut shop, and it gave them a way to kind of be in a smaller space together, and a way to move the camera in a way that felt very unintrusive. So it created this very natural reaction among the performers. So I think you're absolutely right. I think it's really about finding what's unique about your story, and even if it does touch or or is influenced by others really think and invest in what is unique to you. And I think those kind of aspects are gonna jump out when you watch a movie.
So looking across this year's program, what are some of the themes or the topics that are rising to the top?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I didn't get into that part of the question, which is, are we looking for those kinds of? So just to clarify, like, we don't walk in looking for themes, but the themes make themselves apparent in the process. So you're making a movie. If you're watching this or listening in, you're making a movie, and your story and idea is very specific to you. There's, in the case of this year, 16,900 or 17,450 other people who are submitting. So you have no idea what their stories are going to be. And inevitably, when you watch 17,000 works, there are going to be themes that emerge, because there's going to be similar stories, or maybe even similar approaches, or maybe similar subjects. Which I know can be frustrating for artists sometimes, because you spend all this time working and trying to get your film, the dream of being at Sundance. And if you don't make it, it's like, okay, why? And really good films don't always get into all the festivals, because sometimes it's just a film that, maybe there's 2 or 3 films that are exploring similar subject matter or using a similar approach. The filmmakers had no idea that they were doing something similar to someone halfway across the world. So to your question about themes, we start to see, as we're going through the process, some really interesting subjects kind of bubble up. Now, I had a feeling going into this year's festival, and being so aware of the strikes that the industry faced this past summer, that AI would play a role in some capacity in this year's festival. Would it be the reason why we had a downturn in submissions because of the strikes? Fewer films were going to get made and would make it to us, or as it turns out, it actually meant that there was this rush of creativity that happened outside of the traditional system, and it meant that we got more submissions than ever. We'll see what next year brings. So there's that aspect of it. But then when you look at the program, you see artificial intelligence coming up in so many different ways. We have films in which artists, filmmakers are collaborating essentially with AI, collaborating with technology, as is the case with like Gary Hustwit's film about Brian Eno. Brian Eno is such a unique figure who for decades has been working with so many music artists, whether it's U2 or David Bowie or the band Devo, who are in a different subject of a different film in the festival that kind of interlocks in a nice way with this one. So Gary, for example, has created what is effectively the first generative documentary. He's created this look at this figure, Brian Eno, and in collaboration with technology, every time the film plays, even in the 5 or 6 times it plays at the festival, it will be a different experience. Something different it'll be different about the way that it's kind of like remixed differently every time you see it. So if you watch it 5 times at the festival, you'll see 5 different versions of this film. So this signals to us perhaps where storytelling might be going, or which storytellers are listening to this or will see the film and will have ideas about how to tell their own story. So that's one area. But then you also have AI as a subject in a couple of documentaries. In one documentary, you have 2 people trying to help their love and their relationship last forever. And can technology enable their relationship to continue beyond their human form on Earth? Like, these are such big questions. And it's because of technology and because of AI and because of the AI that they've created called Bina 48, who is coming to the festival, that we can even have this conversation about it. And beyond just the technology, it's a truly moving and a little unnerving, but also like kind of a beautiful, it is a beautiful exploration, because it's like these two people that are so committed to each other, they just want that relationship to last forever. So those are just two examples of how AI kind of presented itself to us. So we'll have some conversations during the festival about AI and technology. Our New Frontier section is bringing a couple of projects together, and also a bunch of artists and alums who've been part of the festival over the number of years, for some field building, for some conversation. I think we're at a moment, and time will tell, but I think we're at a moment where when we look back at this rough timeline of 23, 24, 25, where we have the seeds of sort of how not only filmmaking may be altered or evolving, but also our culture broadly.
Yeah, every year after year, I've found that Sundance and the themes that rise to the top of Sundance are often very much on the razor's edge of, what's the zeitgeist going on in society. But also what's really interesting, you bring up the documentary Love Machina is the Bina 48. And even just talking to Connor McBride, the editor of that film, it's so interesting how willing independent filmmakers are to sort of push these new technologies and start incorporating them very early on. For us at Adobe, I was shocked to see that there were numerous films using text-based editing, which is new. It's not even, it's only been in Premiere Pro for less than a year, and it's already incorporated into all these films. So the idea of, that's one of the reasons that Adobe is so excited to be a partner with Sundance, is these creative minds always sort of pushing the social conversation forward, always pushing the technological conversation forward.
It's one of the reasons we appreciate so much the partnership, because we have at Sundance, we have a front row seat to where artists are taking creative expression and creativity and storytelling. And to your point, the tools you bring to the table at Adobe, the way that artists engage them and probably sometimes take them in directions that you couldn't even totally imagine at the time. And then that can help evolve the tool. Is so fascinating to us, because it's that unbridled kind of imagination of artists that propels us forward, not just in the art form, which is a big aspect, but also, again, in the culture broadly. And so our responsibility, again, at Sundance is just to continue to try to center the role and the work and the imagination of the artist in society and culture, and the festival is one way to do that, as a way to continue to support not only the art form, but just the freedom of expression. So when we partner, when we all get together for this endeavor of a festival, that's really what we're standing for and supporting, I think.
So I have another question from the chat. Victor asks, where does a new filmmaker start? And I think that that's actually a great way to transition into talking about some of the ways that Sundance and Adobe invest in this next generation of filmmakers. One with just sort of mentorship and looking to a community. Why is connecting with a community, finding mentorship in filmmaking so important?
I think the reason that connecting with community and finding that mentorship is essential is because, again, for the most part, with the exception of sort of experimental or very personal storytelling, most films are not going to get made without collaboration, without a number of key collaborators, members of community in key positions, just like we're sitting in this room here. It's not just the two of us. There's a bunch of other people in this room that people are not seeing, without whom we wouldn't be able to transmit our conversation, lit the way it is, framed the way it is, edited and composed, and sounds and lit. So that's a model for what we're talking about at Sundance. And on top of that, creativity in all these different positions requires a level of skill. you could be early in your career and have an idea on how to approach an aspect, but you often still need mentorship to sort of hone that skill, even if you're going to learn the rules, even if you're going to break them. One of the best ways that I've found, and one bit of advice that I try to share when I travel to other festivals and participate in panels, or when I speak at film classes and things like that, is something we talked about earlier about when you come to Sundance, like see as many movies as you can, of course, like be in the dark theater and have that communal experience. That's kind of the fundamental. But if you can muster the strength, like meet the people around you. Like using my own example, like talk to the person on the shuttle bus with you, because you might end up starting a company with them, like IndieWire or something else, and sending your whole path of life in a whole different direction, as was my case. So I think that in Sundance Institute, in collaboration with Adobe, for example, we have this program called Adobe Ignite. And maybe we should even just tell people what that is.
Absolutely.
And, you could even, and then I'll tell you about why it connects to a couple films we have in the festival.
Yeah. So the Ignite program is so exciting. And it's really important to call it out to the audience, because applications for Ignite for 2024 are open right now. I know that one of my colleagues is going to drop a link into the chat for a video that shows a little bit more in depth about Ignite and some of the Ignite fellows from the past. But this is our 9th year in partnership with the Sundance Institute for the Ignite Fellowship. And it is, over the last 9 years, we've had over 100 Ignite Fellows. And it's a program for young filmmakers age 18 to 25 that really provides mentorship, fellowship with other filmmakers, guidance with Sundance alumni and industry professionals. And really, it does build that community with specific focus on a global filmmaker pool. There we get applications from all over the world, and really are looking to have a diverse group of fellows that really have representation across a lot of different dynamics. But it's a 1-year fellowship, and there are a number of films in the festival this year from fellowship alumni, which is really exciting.
It's so exciting for us, and I made a note to myself because I don't want to forget to single them out. So we can use just 2 as an example. So we have Sean Wong, who made Didi, and I'll come back to his film in a second because I want to say something a little bit more about it for the audience. And we have Gerardo Corelli's film Viaje de Negocios as a short film. What's interesting to me about this, so let's talk about Sean for a minute with Didi. Sean discovered Sundance, or Sundance discovered Sean through the Ignite program. That's super exciting for us because, again, we get this early opportunity to get a sense of an artist through the Ignite program. We start developing. Sundance has long-term relationships with artists, whether they come to us through Ignite or one of our lab programs or women's programs or any of the number of other programs. And you can go to sundance.org to see the complete list of artist support programs, not to mention even like the collab platform, which is a whole other strand, but we'll come back to all of that another time, or just check out sundance.org when you have some time. But in the case of Sean, he found us and we found him through Ignite. He has made short films, and he went through our director's lab last year. So Ignite to short form work to the director's lab, and then there's a strike. So he's in the lab last summer, and the industry remains in a holding pattern because artists and companies are trying to figure out what the right ways are to work together with the agreements that were being negotiated. So an artist is ready to come out of that lab and make a film to hopefully submit to the festival, and then the industry is on hold. This story has a happy ending because Sean was able to get an interim agreement to shoot the film and finish the film literally just under the deadline in time to submit to us in October. We were really blown away by how touching and special and distinctive the film is, and what a thoughtful filmmaker Sean is. The film is invited. It will premiere in competition next week at the Sundance Film Festival. It's that dream that, in this case, was able to have its moment. And I really am so grateful that, again, we were able to discover Sean through this program, and Sean was able to discover us, and we were able to develop through Ignite this relationship with Sean that would bring us to a moment when we can be part of, all of us can be part of introducing he and his work to an audience next week.
Yeah.
So that's so special. That's the work that we do that takes years to get to this moment, but that's what we're all investing in, right?
Yeah. It's been really fun to watch, Ignite grow from the spark of an idea to the fellowship being established, to really growing and seeing these filmmakers evolve into being in the festival. Like, what a special, and also it's a message to those watching that there are all different paths that filmmakers take, and it doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, I see this map that this person took and that's going to be my way. Is really, investing in yourself and in your story and believing in yourself, but there are opportunities out there. I really encourage people to apply to this program, to, see what happens. One thing that I loved learning about the Sundance Institute is when people apply, whether it's they submit a film to the festival or they apply to Ignite, it's not like if you don't get in, your application is thrown in the garbage and never to be seen again. Can you talk a little bit about
Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. And although I sit in the role of running the festival and public programs, I sit alongside one in particular person who I'll single out, and that is my colleague Michelle Satter, who is the founding director of our Artist Labs and support programs. I mention her because if you're watching this and you have a chance to, after this is over, to go online and search for Michelle Satter and the speech that she gave earlier this week when she was honored with the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award by the Academy. She was given an Oscar for 40 plus years of support of artists. And I'm mentioning this because Michelle was the founding director of all of the artist programs, and we have a whole team that work with her. But I'm singling Michelle out because not only was she just honored this week with this career achievement, very rarely presented award, this Oscar statue. It's so fascinating to me that what precedes this festival, Sundance Film Festival, are the artist programs that were developed by Mr. Redford, Robert Redford, and Michelle. And she talks about it in the speech that she gave at the Oscars, and you can search and find it, and it's up there. It's online. She just talks about their literally their first two conversations. She starts her speech by talking about the first two conversations she had with Robert Redford, and what motivated her and instigated her to launch these artist programs as a way to support artists. And that is fundamental work to the work that we do at the festival. And to your point, there are literally and figuratively a lot of different roads to Sundance. I'm driving up the mountain later today to Park City and then tomorrow to the Sundance Resort, and I got an alert on my phone that there's a blizzard warning. And literally I might have to take a different road because of a blizzard to get to Sundance this weekend. And that's what Sean did. The whole industry around him froze in the moment when he was ready to bring his story to the screen, and he had to find another route. He had to get an interim agreement in order to be able to continue his journey and find another route around. So to your point, it's not only that we have to be creative in the face of obstacles, but also be open to the many different paths. And whether that's the Ignite program or program for women or other programs or other initiatives that we might create together or other institutions might create, our programmers, our curators, and all of our team on the artist program side, Michelle's whole team, are always looking, and I can't tell you the number of times, multiple times per month, per week, per year, it's Michelle or someone on her team saying, hey, who should I be tracking? Who should we be looking for? What have you seen that you think we should be aware of? Like, this is a constant search. It's constantly our team at Sundance constantly wanting to find and nurture and support a next generation of artists, and we're just looking for those relationships. And when there's 17,000 films coming at you, you watch and grab and connect with as many as you can. But believe me, even films that haven't been invited, and maybe folks who are listening right now are familiar with this, the notes we try to send back to films that we may not be able to invite this year, I don't even like to use the word reject, because we aren't rejecting films. We're just inviting the ones we have, we react to and the space for in this moment. But we want to continue our relationships with the artists whose films move us, and our team will send back very thoughtful notes about sort of why we might not have been able to invite the film this year. But believe me, we are tracking artists that we invite and artists that we don't invite, because we see potential. And the last thing I'll say on this is we have an artist in this year's festival. I don't know if I should say their name, because I want to ask them if I can say this, but we have an artist who has submitted a film to the festival 14 times and was invited for the very first time this year.
I remember interviewing David Lowery many years ago, who's the director of Ain't Them Bodied Saints, was like his first big title out of Sundance, but said that he submitted 12 times before he was accepted to the festival. And it really just there's an artist, Carissa Potter, who has people I've loved. It's failure is an option, is what is like a slogan that I'm like, I love that like it really is important to building a storytelling voice, that like not everyone's going to land, or there's always evolution to be had.
And thankfully there are other festivals and paths and routes to an audience. So look, this festival happens next week, and immediately after, a whole team from Sundance are going to the Berlin Festival. I'm traveling to some regional festivals in California. Others are traveling to festivals in other parts of the world, because the search is never ending, and we're constantly looking for artists and filmmakers and stories that we might find in unexpected places, or that we might not have been able to invite to Sundance, or that we might not even be aware of at Sundance, that we might find in other ways.
Yeah. So I'd love to just share some of the exciting the history of the Ignite program, in how we've been able to help create a more diverse industry. Fellows over the years have represented 17 different countries. Wow. 75% of the fellows have been people of color, 52% female, 24.5% part of the LGBTQA plus community. So just again, really encourage you all to consider submitting. We will be putting a link in the chat as to where you can learn more about application for the Ignite Fellowship. But that's very exciting. Applications are open until February 7th. So important to note. And then the other fellowship at the festival is the Women to Watch Fellowship. Yeah. And that's really about supporting female identifying filmmakers who are already starting to create some really exciting work in film and media. And we have a couple of Women to Watch alumni in the programming as well this year.
Yeah, we're excited to have Ileana Sosa. God Save Texas is one of our series that we're debuting at the festival this year, and Ileana's God Save Texas chapter La Frontera is one, and Gabriela Ortega's film Border Hopper, which is a short. Again, for us, our shorts team, does a lot of work. It's a heavy lift. Of those 17,000 submissions, about almost just under 5,000 of those are features or episodic. And so that means that about 12,000 are short films. 12,000 short films for 55 slots. And only about half of those slots will go to films from the US, the rest for the rest of the world. So the odds are challenging, but the same with our shorts team. Like, we are watching a lot of short films, and we look to like this program or other programs as ways to help us get a sense of some of the exciting artists and work that are out there. And then we just watch a lot. It's the needles in a haystack, trying to just watch as many films as we can to see what resonates for us, and then the films that kind of fit together naturally as part of a program. And these programs are our tool. We were talking earlier about the artist tools that artists have available to them to make their work. These programs are our tools as ways for us to find those connections to different artists. Look, if you're a filmmaker who's interested in these programs and you're at the festival, say hi, like meet each other, meet us. It's just getting to know the ecosystem and the community, to use your word earlier, Megan, that we're all a part of. And that's how we build a program year after year at Sundance.
Yeah, actually, for those who are attending the festival in person, Adobe, for the first time, we have a space, and the space is meant to really provide a place for filmmakers to come together, to commune and build community. So we're really excited about that. Hopefully, we'll throw a link in the chat for people to register if they're going to be in person. But so speaking to Women to Watch, and other, fellows of the program, but other female-identifying storytellers, how are these films from these filmmakers changing the conversations around independent film?
I mean, to me, I think that the diversity, in every sense of the word, of storytelling in our program is enriching. Well, it's enriching our industry. There are still, and so we have to be realistic, there are still major hurdles that our industry are facing. There was just a study that was released this week about the obstacles that for example, women identifying filmmakers are facing, even despite the sort of rush of awareness and attention that came even out of the pandemic moment. Studios sort of waking up, for lack of a better way to say it, to the opportunities that women identifying filmmakers could bring to the screen. We've seen broadly in the industry some backtracking. So we, on the front lines of independent storytelling, have more work to do to continue to showcase those stories. It's a responsibility we have to continue that work. And to me, it shouldn't be a question. when you have, I was at this event the other night that I mentioned, where my colleague Michelle was honored with the Oscar, and I had a moment to run into Greta Gerwig, who has a long history in the independent film community. Talk about finding your community, building that community, honing and developing your craft, finding mentorship. I mean, Greta is such a perfect example. And we were able to talk for a few minutes, and we've known each other for a number of years. And Greta has just put in the work, and she was sending regards to the festival this year and asking about the work we're doing. But the point is that in a moment where Barbie was this transformational film this year, and Greta is receiving such worthy attention for her tenacity and persistence to tell the story she wanted to tell, there shouldn't be a question about the value of showcasing stories by women identifying filmmakers. But yet it remains a struggle. So it just means we have to double down on our work.
Yeah. You bring up a good point, because it's clear that strides have been made, toward, you know, more diversity and representation in the film industry, but there's still so much more work to be done. What do you see as some of the next big hurdles that really need to be tackled, and what does it mean to you personally and to Sundance as a whole to start addressing this more and more?
I think the biggest one that comes to mind, and there's a number of them, you know, being a not-for-profit organization in 2024 is challenging. But putting that aside for a moment, the first thing that came to mind when you said that, when you asked the question just now, is the notion of audience. Because the pandemic and this pandemic moment, this pandemic era, has reset and really challenged the way that we all as audience members engage with storytelling, whether that's independent storytelling or mass market Hollywood storytelling. The way we watch the movies and series and short form content and everything else that's being created, the way we engage creativity now has probably changed forever because of the disruption in the way we experience that. Now, maybe there was already a change coming, and maybe the pandemic accelerated it or exacerbated it or affected it in a more pronounced way, so we're feeling it maybe faster. But I think that as institutions, as partners, as organizations, we have to figure out, it's another responsibility of ours, to figure out not only how to watch 17,000 submissions and pick the ones that we think deserve a spotlight, but we probably have to figure out how to go further in helping those artists we do choose find their audience, meet their audience. Because the festival itself that we're about to all jump into next week is really just the beginning. And so I talk a lot about first impressions. We're doing our best to try to give each of those films the best possible introduction, the best possible first impression to an audience, whether that's other artists, whether that's an industry, whether that's film critics who are there to write about the movies, whether that's curators who come from all over the world to watch films that they will then take to other festivals. This is just the starting point. And given how dramatically the audience is evolving right now and the way we as audience members have changed the way we watch, whether on a screen like this or a big one, that's something we have to really grapple with, because it's not a given or a guarantee that all of the films that you all are making, that are all being made, are going to have access to an audience. So we have to do the best work we can to help these films and filmmakers have a better shot at connecting with an audience member.
Yeah, so that leads really well into some of my final questions. You know, what advice would you have for aspiring filmmakers listening today, watching as they pursue this dream of being a filmmaker or getting into Sundance?
As far as advice, I would say continue to hone your craft. Find those mentors, those people you trust, who you can rely on for honest advice. Quick side note, at that same event that I mentioned the other day, Ryan Coogler, a filmmaker we all know now, because 10 years ago his film Fruitvale Station emerged at Sundance. He spent years going through different lab programs and things. He was talking about Michelle Satter, and he's invited to the program, to one of the labs. I think it was the screenwriter's lab actually first, and then the director's lab. And Sundance was so supportive, and then he showed a first cut of his film to Michelle, and he was like, ready to feel the love. You guys should watch this speech. It's online. Ready to feel the love and support from Michelle, like the pat on the back, like, you've done a great job. In fact, and he talks about this, it was complete opposite. Here's what you've done wrong. You put this scene in the wrong place. You did this wrong. This is a false note. You need to fix that. And sometimes we also need that reality check, whether in our individual lives or whether an artist. So many artists I talk to sometimes struggle with finding those trustworthy voices to help give them that real feedback. So it's an important, I think, tool to develop in your community, not just the support. You need the encouragement, as hard as this is, but you also need the honest feedback from a mentor who can pull you aside quietly in a safe space and say, you're not there yet.
Yeah.
But what can I do to help you get there?
Yeah.
Let's tackle this. She said to him, take the night, take a rest, catch your breath, and then tomorrow we'll get back into it. And sometimes you need that too. So I think it's building that community, building that mentorship, and then whether you're coming to Sundance and you're going to check out all the cool stuff that Adobe's doing or the panels that we're creating and all that, if not, what festivals are you traveling to in your local community that are similar, where you can meet like-minded folks who are interested in what you're interested in, and you can find your collaborators, find your crew, find your posse. So I think it's finding the way to combine all of that, finding your community, finding your support system, and then just being connected to what's happening, tracking what films are being made, watching as many films as you can, watching the conversations that you all host or that we do at Sundance Collab, to try to just get some more perspectives as you're kind of honing and focusing your work.
Yeah, it's wonderful because in the last 5-10 years, the tools to create and the ability to make films has become so much more accessible. But you're right, it's that stepping out of your box, going beyond just you working alone, actually showing your work to others and starting to build that community, which is that first step into making it a reality. We are coming up on time, Eugene. It has been so wonderful to chat with you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much to everyone who has joined the chat. Please do. I mean, you gave us so many fun things to watch. I'm really excited to go online and check some of these things out. But good luck in the next week.
Thank you.
We will see all of you in some of our programming coming from the festival in Park City next week. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks.